I want to flag up the fact that people often say, oh, I'm not a public speaker, and yet they will speak happily in a conversation.
Power to Live More with Jo Dodds.
Welcome to the Power to Live More podcast, all about productivity, organisation, well-being, energy and resilience. I'm Jo Dodds, and I started this show to enable interesting people to share their stories about how they use their power to live more, and by that I mean to do the stuff that they want to do more than the stuff that they need to or should do. It's about creating a life for yourself where you have the energy, health and space to be happy and fulfilled, spending your time as you'd like, whether that be at work, home or somewhere else entirely. That's your choice.
Hello, my name is Ellie Dodds and I'm co-presenter, and today Jo is interviewing Susan Heaton-Wright. Jo and Susan have known each other online for a good long while, and Susan recently interviewed Jo for her podcast Superstar Communicator. Susan is an impact communications and speaking trainer for emerging leaders and the creator of the Superstar Communicator program. She is an international speaker, the MD of award-winning music company Viva Live Music, podcaster and a former prize-winning international opera singer. She delivers seminars, workshops and individual training for many companies including Astra Zeneca, Shell, Microsoft, AXA and Quintiles. As a CPD accredited speaker, she regularly delivers speeches and seminars to lawyers, accountants and finance professionals. She is regularly interviewed on BBC Radio 5 Live, BBC Two, local radios and international podcasts. Susan has contributed to articles in Forbes, The Guardian, Huffington Post, Thrive Global, The Scotsman and trade publications. Susan is a Fellow of the Royal Geographical Society, the Royal Society of Arts and the Incorporated Society of Musicians. She leads a project of musicians in Greece annually to deliver music workshops to refugees in Athens as part of the Love Without Borders charity. Back to the studio.
Today I'm interviewing Susan Heaton-Wright of Superstar Communicator. Welcome, Susan. Great to have you with me.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
It's been great to talk to you again, or will be great to talk to you again. I've been interviewed by you recently. We've just spent ages catching up after Christmas, and we thought we'd better get on with the interview, so I can see this is going to go well.
Hopefully.
So start by telling us a bit about you, what you do and where you do it.
Right, my business is Superstar Communicator, website superstarcommunicator.com, and what I do is empower people to create impactful performances when they speak and when they're having conversations in business. And I work with people remotely. So from my home, I can do webinars, one-to-one training, but also I go into companies and work with them with workshops or work one-to-one with individuals, and also I speak.
Which you would expect, I guess, because that's what you're teaching people as well.
As I was saying that, I thought that's a bit of a silly thing to say, but I do speak and get paid for that as well.
Yeah, but some people do teach things that they don't really do, so it's good to know that there's that integrity to your offering.
And you know what, every time I speak I learn something, and it's something else that I can include and say, you know what, I was speaking last week and it didn't go as well as it could have done because ABC. Yes. And I'm being totally honest and vulnerable and authentic, and I like to hope that people will respond to that in a positive way.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I as you know, I help home-based coaches and consultants with being successful and living more, but I also am a corporate consultant, and part of the reason for that is exactly what you've said, that I'm sort of, a jobbing consultant experiencing the same things that the people that I work with are as well, so that I don't sort of lose that sort of grip of reality, I suppose. So I completely get that. So and where are you based as well, and are you based from home?
I have a home office. I'm based just north of Welwyn Garden City, so I'm about half an hour on the train from central London.
Lovely. And easy to get to the rest of the country, different from me, where I'm sort of stuck in Kent because of the M25.
Oh, M25. Hey.
I don't call it stuck. I love it here, but yeah, I don't think anyone comes to Kent because it's around the M25 all through London or across the Channel, of course.
But you've got that wonderful train line that goes through Kent.
Yes.
It does stop in Kent before you go to France.
Yes, the Eurostar, exactly. But also just the high speed. I often meet people at events in London, and they'll be from like Brighton or somewhere, and they'll say, "Where have you come from?" And I'll say, "Oh, Hythe near Folkestone in Kent," and they'll go, "Oh, must have been a terrible journey." And I'm like, no, it would be way better than yours, because mine's like an hour from my doorstep to St Pancras. Yours is about 2 hours, and your train will have broken down or been delayed, or both.
Or not running.
So yeah, it does work very well. And we were laughing over Christmas, New Year. We were skiing in France and met our French friends on the slopes for Christmas Day lunch. And exactly a week later, they were sat down at our dining room table having New Year's Day dinner with us, because they actually live in North France, and we just hop across, and vice versa, to keep in touch with each other, because we're that close. So it's a great place to be, really. That's the end of my sales pitch for Kent. Right. So getting back to you, Susan, tell us why you do what you do, because you've got a really interesting background, and it wasn't always about speaking, albeit I'm sure you'll say it was about communicating, but in a different way. So tell us a bit about why you do what you do.
I've used my voice all of my working life as an adult. So originally I was a teacher for a couple of years, and my vision at the time when I left university was that I was going to see the world by teaching in different countries. And that, at the end of the 80s, the 90s, was a very safe way for women to travel. I think you would agree with that. But unfortunately, a series of, very traumatic and difficult events meant that I had to come back from Kenya, where I was teaching. I was involved in a car crash, and I was left for dead, and I had multiple life-changing injuries. So I came back from Kenya with no job, no money, and fighting for my life, and having to spend quite some time recovering from that physically and mentally. But a chance situation meant that I went along to an audition for one of those big London choirs. Somebody said, "Oh, come along with me," and this was a year after this had all happened. And I had to audition, which was pretty scary for me because I wasn't a soloist. And the conductor stopped me, and this conductor is now an international name, I won't mention him, and said, "You really need to get your voice trained because it's quite special."
Wow. So how old were you at this time?
I was 23.
And you'd sung already, so you'd sung in choirs when you were younger and so on, but this was part of your sort of recovery from what you've said.
Yeah, I mean, I always sang as a child and played the violin, so I had that background, but certainly I would always be in the background, which was very much me. And so I got a singing teacher. Eventually I went to music college as a more mature student, so I wasn't going at 18 or 21, and I got scholarships to study there. I had a scholarship to study in Italy, and then was a jobbing singer. And I sang in Europe and United States as well as throughout UK as a soloist. Then when I had my son, the listeners will understand what I mean about this, because you are home-based entrepreneurs, and being a singer is similar in that it's just you. Yeah. You don't have anybody that can do it for you, and childcare issues are one of the challenges. And when you have to be almost as fit as an athlete, physically and mentally, and the preparation, I found that very difficult. I felt I was compromising all the time, and in the end I thought, why am I doing this? I've chosen to have my son, and yet I just don't feel that it's working for me, so I retired. But I had met lots of people who were not from the music profession who kept saying to me, how is it that you can project your voice? How is it that, you've got presence when you walk in a room? How is it that you really look as though you're listening in a conversation and you really engage people? So it made me realize that there was possibly a need for those skills. And then I started asking people that were in employment what sort of challenges they had with communication, and went from there. And I should flag up that as a schoolgirl, I was one of those kids that didn't speak up in class. I would be so nervous about speaking up in class. I went to a W.H. Smith interview age 16, didn't say a word when they asked the questions, and they didn't even bother to phone me to say I hadn't got the job. And at school, I was a prefect and paid one of the other girls out of my own pocket money to lead the prayers when it was my turn. I know you're just laughing. And I say this because I know exactly what it's like to be so overwhelmed and nervous and just feel that I can't do it. And yet I went on, at music college, I was surrounded by people who had been the diva since the year dot, with their families running around telling them how wonderful they were. And it was just like second nature to them. So I had to quickly acquire all of those skills. And looking back, I realized I'd never been given those skills or permission to use those skills.
So firstly, a great example of what I often talk about, which is that, your life doesn't necessarily pan out as you expected, or you don't have to know what you want to do in the first place, because what you end up doing is often completely different to what you started with. And I just think this is a great example of that. But my next question is, tell me about that development of those skills that you hadn't been taught or that you hadn't been encouraged to use, because that's what you're now teaching other people to do. Clearly you went through a transition where you learnt that when you were old enough to know that that's what you were learning and to be able to reflect on it. Often, as you say, we learn these things when we're young and we can't really remember how we learnt to do them. It just happened, sort of thing, or we think it came naturally or whatever, but you actually had to learn it. So what was that transition like? To sort of tell us a bit more about that.
I think one of the key things was permission, that it was okay to be up there and people looking at you, because unfortunately I was brought up in a family that I shouldn't show off, I shouldn't be centre stage and all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. So that was a massive mindset thing, that it was absolutely okay for me to be centre stage with the lights on me. Mm-hmm. But also really knowing how much power you have over an audience in a positive way. I don't mean in a manipulative way, but how the way that you stand, how the way that your first appearance on stage, or if you're a speaker or somebody who is in a meeting, the first thing that you say, or how you enter the meeting room, because people are subconsciously going to pick up on those things.
Yes, yeah.
And all things like,
come on.
All body language, pacing yourself, the way that where you look, for example. Now, it depends on the size of the room. If we were in a conversation in real life, we would be having eye contact. But if I was speaking, you were in the audience and there were 200 people in the audience as well, you would use your eye contact, for example, and your body language in a very different way to make sure that everybody felt they were engaged with you.
So that's what I was just about to ask you about, actually, because I speak, and I know that I speak by actually creating eye contact and building a rapport with individuals in the room. I see a lot of speakers who don't do that and just speak sort of generally out there. And some of them, the ones that I particularly don't like, where they speak to a corner of the ceiling at the back of the room.
Absolutely. I had a university lecturer that used to do that, and it was always his top left-hand corner, so our right-hand corner, and
Yeah.
it was just really, really weird. And
Yeah.
it's almost like singers, you know, the type that wallow and they close their eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's exactly the same thing, that you're closing something where you can engage. Oh, I haven't said that in a very good way. You are closing a window from which you can engage with your audience.
And is that the key? Because you could say that some of those people, as you know, singers, close their eyes, and you know they're sort of singing to themselves, aren't they? Really, or certainly or certainly they're singing regardless of what their audience is doing. So I think the reason, because I'm never worried about standing up in front of hundreds of people, because I think I'm speaking to lots of individuals individually, and I will look at their faces, and if they're responding in the right way, then I know I'm saying the right stuff, and if they're not, then you know I adjust accordingly, sort of thing. So I never see it as a sort of sea of people. I see it as a load of individuals, which is why my daughter gets really annoyed with me, because when I'm in rooms where people are performing, I'm particularly enthusiastic and smiley, and if it's a you know, somebody telling jokes or even saying slightly funny things that aren't that funny, I will tend to overly laugh, which annoys her. And I keep saying to her, you know, don't underestimate the power of having one person in the room that is absolutely encouraging you throughout a whole talk.
Absolutely.
And that's why I'm that person.
Yes. And another thing that's really useful to think, I'm sure you come across this as well, if there are people that look disengaged, either they're fiddling around with their phones, or they look grumpy, or they, you know, their body language is very closed, you never know what shit is going on in their lives.
Yeah.
And you don't know whether they've just not got the brain power to be able to take in what you are sharing with other people, or whether that is their way of taking in information. They might be taking notes, they might be tweeting, they might be cross that they're there, that actually they'd prefer to be doing their work or something else. But don't judge people, and don't judge the success of your speech based on their immediate response.
No. Well, and also the fact that, you know, if you have got 100 people in a room and there's a number of people behaving in that way, even if it was that they're turned off and not interested, you know, you don't want to let down the other 90 people or 50 people or whatever, or even 3 people who might be getting something from it.
Absolutely. You know, there were so many things that I learned at music college, and when I was a musician, and one of them was, I remember old Diva saying to me, you know, remember there's one person that you could just make their night, even if everybody else is bored. That one person, that's the important thing.
That's really important to know and sort of to understand. So you went to music college. You mixed with all these people, and you started performing. Then changed your life to what you do now. What do you think you'd have said to yourself, like, you know, when you were 15, 18, or when you were paying your person, if you'd known that was going to be you?
Oh, good old Kate. She took the money very happily. That's all I'll say. Do you know what? My brother, and this is a good measure, he cannot believe what I do now. He said, you used to just stay in your room listening to music, reading, and you know, doing your own stuff. You never came out of your room, typical teenager. And what are you doing now? And actually, maybe his voice, maybe his comment is better than mine.
Yeah, because he's seen that massive sort of transition.
Yes.
So let's think about that whole sort of introversion extroversion thing. I was having a conversation with somebody this week and saying how for most of my life I thought introversion extroversion was about being noisy or quiet, and that because I'm quite noisy when I'm with people, that therefore I was extroverted, and that's what a lot of people think I am. But actually now I know it's about where you get your energy from. I know that I can go and do noisy, and I do noisy because I feel like I have to. When I'm in a room of people, I have to be part of making that room lively. But it takes a lot of energy, and I spend a lot of time on my own reading and not talking to people and not answering the phone and things like that. So I've realised that that's that's the situation. And a lot of people who speak, the general consensus is that they must be extroverts, but actually the vast majority of them, from the research I've done and the things I read and people I speak to, I think are probably introverts, and that it takes quite a lot of energy to do what they do, and I don't know why it would be that it tends to be that a lot of introverts do speak. But what are your thoughts on that whole topic? I just did a bit of a summary.
Yeah, I'm an introvert, and people don't believe it. And like you, I can play extrovert, but I need time to recharge and spend time on my own. And that's absolutely fair enough. There are plenty of performers, whether they're speakers or musicians, singers, who are actually introverts, but they know how to go into the zone, and they know when the environment is right for them to be extrovert. I think for me, and this is not based on anything scientific, but I think that we adapt to different situations. So it's not a black and white binary introvert extrovert. We can play and adapt to different situations. It might drain our energy more being introverts to be in extrovert situations, but if we can manage our energy and know that, right, I've got to leave now, I've got to go and have a break to recharge, then that's okay.
Yes, yeah, and there's a lot of advice around things like, if you go to conferences, building in that time where you're on your own, so you can get the energy to sort of carry on with the next bit and that sort of thing. I think it's interesting. Do you think there's more introverts who are doing the sort of stage stuff, whether that be performing as musicians or speakers, or do you think it's probably 50-50, and it's just that there is no pattern to it? It just feels like I hear a lot of people talking about the introversion thing, but then standing on stage, and so I then wonder what draws people to do that. But I don't know whether it is out of kilter or whether it is just anybody and everybody.
I really don't know. It'd be interesting to do some research on that. And to have some proper research, not just our mates who are probably introverts like us.
Yeah.
But I would imagine that if you are introverted, and you know as well as I do that going on stage, whether that's performing or speaking, is quite a high stress situation. But introverts can manage that situation to be in their safe psychological zone, and be okay in that. But certainly for me, a big noisy party, I can't manage that in the same sort of way because of the noise. Just the whole, the oral stimuli from that is just too much for me.
Yeah.
But that is different from being a speaker or performer, because you are able to control certain elements of that.
Yes, yeah. It's quite noisy when I speak, but that's just because I'm quite loud. No.
Yeah, but the other background noise, everybody in the room, and all of that stuff.
Yes, yeah, no, I agree. I was talking again to somebody this week I met, and I was saying about having been to a networking sort of conference-y type thing a few years ago now, and there were like 200 women in the room, and I just said I had to stand at the side of the room, and I was thinking, why am I here? This is like ridiculous. It's like, I mean, I've got quite a high-pitched voice when I get excited, but it was like the decibel in the room it's just scary. And I thought, why did I come? And I knew why I went. There was a specific reason that I'd gone to the event for the subject and everything else, but it did help me to remember that those sorts of big conferences perhaps aren't something that or if I go, I have to be really clear of why I'm going, rather than just thinking it's what I should do, or that it'll be fine sort of things. It's interesting. But again, the other thing we were talking about was how, as you get older, how much you start to understand about yourself that it would have been so much easier to understand years ago, wouldn't it?
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. And I think that there's more out there now, so we can read about it, and perhaps people are more honest about how they feel. I don't know if you were brought up like this, grin and bear it. Well, my parents weren't even boomers, they were the silent generation, but that there was that boomer type of messaging, come on, grin and bear it. Pick yourself up from that, when actually maybe it wasn't the right decision to make.
Yeah. So tell us how you work with your clients and what that means in terms of the shape of your days and your weeks.
Okay, so from a point of view of working with my clients, I use my own trademarked program, Superstar Communicator, on different aspects of communication, whether that is understanding your audience so that you can create compelling messages, through to the performance. So there are some people that perhaps just aren't impactful in meetings, for example, because their body language is so closed and they haven't got any eye contact with anyone. So when they speak, no one takes any notice of them. But I work with people in different ways. I can work virtually, either with webinars, which my webinars are CPD accredited, so I'm able to offer them to a number of organisations, but also one-to-one virtually. And I work face-to-face, either individually or in teams, so workshops or masterclasses.
Lovely. So what does that mean in terms of getting stuff done in your business, in what each day looks like, and how you make sure that you're doing the things that you need to do? Because I think one of the things for us as home-based business owners with clients around the world, or also working from corporate into sort of non-corporate small business or whatever, is every day's different. It's a real challenge to stay focused. How do you do that in your business?
Well, one thing that I do on a Monday morning is that I spend a couple of hours on the business, working out what I'm going to do that week, what essential things I need to do, business development, delivery of training, whether that's individual, virtual, face-to-face, all of those things, preparation for things, phone calls I need to make. And then at the end of each month, I review what I've done to see how far forward I've got for my overall target for the year. But I make sure that I have a couple of hours each week when I'm working on the business, because it can be very easy for that time to be overridden by X client who needs this done now. And actually, it's very, very important to be working on the business as well as in the business, because otherwise you can lose your direction.
And did that come through something sort of not having done that, or through learning or somebody helping you to do that? Because not everyone does that. And not everyone uses that terminology as well. But a lot of people do just sort of do and don't take that time to stop and sort of take that higher level view of what you're doing. Where's that come from?
I think that's come from really from business training that I had. I was lucky enough about 16 months ago to have some free consultancy from Exemplas, which is based in Hertfordshire, for business development. And it came exactly the right time, because it was just after my son had gone to university. And we looked at how we could structure the week and really do the sort of helicopter work, looking at the business every week and reviewing that. And also I use a passion planner, which hey, don't get too excited about it. It's just one of those business calendars, and it actively encourages you to review the last month, review the last year. Now, what are you going to do to move forward to get to your targets?
Mm-hmm.
And, a few years back, I don't know if you come across Carrie Green, the female entrepreneur. For a while, I was a member when it was about £30 a month, and she actively encouraged you to plan things in a monthly way. I learnt a lot from her.
Yeah, I think I might have been on her mailing list. Her name does ring a bell. So let's sort of move into thinking about learning and improving, because your business has changed and your focus, obviously what you even do, has changed a lot over the years. You've had phases that you just mentioned. Things change when your son arrived. It's changed again since he's gone to university. How have you continued to learn and improve yourself and what you do?
I am really interested in technology. I'm not a techie, but anything to make my life easier. And I always get very excited by new things. And there are a couple of new things that I'm now using that are very, very helpful. And that stimulates me. Also, listening to audiobooks, the Audible books, business ones, I find very helpful. And occasionally I go to business lectures. I'm a member of the Professional Speaking Association, and so there are other speakers that are delivering content which can be very, very helpful. And I read the newspapers, believe it or not, online, but there are certain sections. For example, the Sunday Times, the style section, now has some things on career development on a Sunday, and they're really, really interesting. And it just helps me to think about what I'm doing, what I might say to other people. But yes, listening to the radio, listening to podcasts, all those.
And lovely. You talked about being interested in technology and having some tools that you're using. What would your top three be of things that?
Right. Well, I do use I use Hootsuite, so I can make sure that there's some social media that's going out every day. I use a CRM system called Connectably, and I was one of the original. One of the founder users.
Lucy Whittington's thing, wasn't it? Was that Lucy involved in that?
Yes, Lucy and Gareth. And it's developed, and it's been great being involved in that because you can give feedback. But the idea is that it's a CRM system that's connected to your Xero, so for doing invoicing, and also has a calendar. So for me, people often will book a time on my calendar, and that's synchronized and everything, which is really, really helpful, putting it all in one place. I also use, and this is something that I very, very recently discovered, something called clipscribe.com. And
that's new to me. Do tell.
Yeah. It's new off the press. I was very excited when I was recommended this. And again, it's still in the beta stage. So again, very exciting to be involved. You give feedback to the creator. And the idea is that you upload a video and it will you can create a frame around it with a title, and then it will generate the words that you've said, the text.
Oh, okay.
Now you go in and double check so there aren't any howlers in there. But essentially it's a really neat, clear way that you can present a video, and the words are going on there so people don't feel that they have to put the volume on.
Yes, yeah, which is a big point. I'm not very good at watching videos at the best of times, but I love it when they've got writing on them and I don't actually have to listen to them.
Exactly. So I felt that that was a real positive. So I've started using that.
And what was it called again?
Clip Scribe. So Clip Scribe.
Yeah. Okay. Lovely. Cool. And yeah, so that was your 3, wasn't it?
It was Smith, yes.
Lovely, lovely. And just to finish off before we go to the last couple of questions, what about some top tips from what you're teaching your clients? One of the things we sort of discussed before we came on was particularly about meetings. So let's talk a bit about how people can be more effective in meetings, because we may not all be speakers, but we all need to meet people at times, don't we?
Absolutely. And I want to flag up the fact that people often say, oh, I'm not a public speaker, and yet they will speak happily in a conversation. And I think that once you're not talking to yourself, you're public speaking. But it's a case of scaling people down. Yeah, it's a case of scaling it up or down. But meetings, obviously, you want to be able to present the best version of you and your business to potential clients or existing clients, partners, all of those sorts of things. And I always use my Superstar Communicator model to think of this. The 5 areas are, let me think, they're audience, content, preparation, performance, and voice. So if I think of those 5 things, I would try and work out who the audience are going to be, the other people in the meeting, what's in it for them, why are they there, what do they want out of the conversation. Content, from that you can hone your content, you can perhaps adjust things to make sure that it will really engage them. Preparation, doing your preparation, finding out the sorts of things that they will be interested in, practicing if necessary. Preparing yourself so that you're not nervous if you do get nervous before meetings. I'm doing this very, very quickly, by the way.
Yes, obviously. You charge for it otherwise.
What?
So you charge for it otherwise.
Exactly.
So yeah, quick fun.
Performance, really thinking about how you are engaging with others in a non-verbal way. So your body language, are you spending your time with crossed legs and crossed arms looking very defensive, or do you have open body language and you use gestures, positive gestures, not naughty ones, and eye contact, because that can make a difference. And the voice, the way that I say this is that it's really important to make it as easy as possible for other people to listen to you and take in what you're saying. So if you speak too fast, or you mumble, or you've got a really, really strong accent, for example, it can make it more difficult for other people to take in what you say. So you might need to address that.
Yeah, some great top tips there. Thank you. And as you said, I do love the fact that as soon as you're not talking to yourself, you are public speaking of some description or another.
You like that one?
Definitely. So let's get a question. So what about those days when it all goes horribly wrong for you and you've had a bad day, things aren't working out as you'd hoped? How do you deal with those days?
We all have them, don't we? I think the best thing to do is to switch off your phone, switch off your computer, go for a walk, or go for a swim, or go to the gym, or go and listen to some music, do some craft. I do all of those things, play my viola, all of those things. So switch off and use my brain in a different way. Certainly with all of those things that I mentioned, because you're doing something else, your brain has the opportunity to put back everything in its place so that you're no longer stressed about it.
Oh, I love that concept. Your brain putting everything back in its place. I do like that.
I learned that, obviously it was part of my rehabilitation. For many years, I didn't drive following my accidents.
Yeah.
And 10 years ago, I decided I wanted to drive again. That's a completely different podcast and a different conversation, because, what I learned from that, and I went through hell and back psychologically. But one of the things that I found was that if it was a difficult drive, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. And somebody taught me that if before you go to bed, you do a quiz, or I do lots of crafty things, some, a paper cutting or embroidery, you are focused on something really, really easy and calm, and the brain has the opportunity to get everything put back in place so that you go to bed and have a good night's sleep.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And lastly then, those days where you get to live more, that's where you get to do more of the things that you want to do and less of the things that you feel you should do or you have to do. What does that look like for you? I'm imagining more crafting and viola playing and so on, but what's that day look like?
Yeah, spending time with my family, going for a lovely walk. I love swimming in Lido. So in the summer, I spend a lot of time going from Lido to Lido. I'm discovering more in the country, and I've got a book to tick them off when I've visited them. I know, geek. But all sorts of things like that are just fun. And, I go and see my parents because they're elderly now. My dad's got Alzheimer's, and I want to be able to enjoy that time with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really, really nice to finish on. And going back to the Lido thing, I didn't know there were enough that you could make a list. And
there is a book, I've got it by my side now, called The Lido Guide. And I know there are well over 100, I think there are 130 Lidos all over the country that you can go and visit, and then you can tick it off in your book.
That is very cool. No, I'm impressed with that. Thank you, Susan. It's been great, as expected, interviewing you. Tell people how they can find out more about you and connect with you.
Yeah, please connect with me. My website is superstarcommunicator.com. And I'm on LinkedIn. There's only one Susan Heaton-Wright. And I've also got a podcast. Am I allowed to say it?
Of course. Yes.
My podcast is Superstar Communicator. Original name, isn't it, really, given my company? And it's all about being able to communicate, particularly spoken communication, in an effective way to make sure that people take notice of you.
Lovely. Thank you, Susan. Really appreciate your time.
That's my pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me on.
This information is available in the show notes. If you go to powertolivemore.com/, in this case, 147, then you'll find them there. This week I want to talk about yesterday, a day where I had a call with one of the new members of Power to Live More Calm, and we were talking in general terms about what she's doing within her fairly new business. And then later in the day we had one of our weekly Calm calls, which is where the members get to speak to each other on Zoom. We have a bit of a catch up, see how we're all getting on, and talk about any business questions that anybody has. And our new member, in passing, asked us to critique a paragraph from her newsletter that she was due to send out, that she just finished writing. And it actually kicked off a really interesting discussion about the whole concept of defining your target market and then writing copy and content aimed at that market and aimed at the whole concept of the fact that people buy what they want, not what they need. And also, we as business owners have a tendency to want to talk about our features, the features that we offer, or the features of the product that we offer, rather than the benefits. So I think I've said before on here, Lisa Sasevich used to talk about the fact that you should be selling the destination, not the plane journey. So we have a tendency to talk about all the bells and whistles, all the things that we give people when we're selling something to them. It might be videos and content and downloads and all that sort of stuff. But actually what we should be selling them is the end result, the transformation that we help them to achieve with whatever we give to them. So it was really interesting that we started with a, as I say, fairly innocuous how are you, what are you doing, how's the week going sort of conversation. And it ended up being quite a deep coaching conversation with me and one of my other members particularly, who had some really good ideas and thoughts to share on the topic. And as a result of that, I went and created a new course on the membership site, Power to Live More Calm, about how to define your target market. I was able to provide some other resources to the member so that she can have a look at how she's writing in terms of her copy for her customers. And then coincidentally, I was walking today. I'm dog sitting at the moment for my friend, and I am going obviously on a twice daily walk with the dog and listening to podcasts and catching up on podcasts whilst I do that. And interestingly, given the conversation yesterday, there was a podcast that I listened to with James Schranko, which was talking all about business analytics, which is what the person yesterday actually does for her business. So I've got a resource to send her as a result of listening to that podcast today. And it just made me think about how often fairly sort of innocuous conversations can lead into really in-depth coaching conversations. But then quite often what happens is you sort of spot other resources and things that can help somebody around whatever that topic has been that you've been talking about. And it's interesting, I wonder if I'd listened to the podcast today, not having had that conversation yesterday, would I have remembered to flag it and share it with her, or was it because we'd had that particular conversation yesterday? We shall never know. But one of the advantages of the membership site that I'd already talked to her about when we had our call about her becoming a member in the first place was the fact that it's very individual. When we're running a home-based business and we're looking to be successful as well as to live more, and as you know, that's where I talk about getting to do more of the things that you want to do and less of the stuff that you don't want to do. It's not a one-size-fits-all. And so one of the real benefits of the membership site and the way that we work together is that we can look very much individually at whatever it is that person wants to achieve and the circumstances that they're in order to refer resources, help with ideas and strategies and tips and that sort of thing. So although I have quite a lot of content in terms of courses and materials on the membership site, which are there in a sort of pull mentality rather than push, i.e. you take advantage of them if that's something that you need and you ignore it if it's something that you don't. The one-to-one stuff, the conversations, the individual help that I offer and that the community gets involved with is very much focused on the individual and what their individual needs are. And that was something that I was really keen to do with the membership site, because all the stuff that I talk about around productivity, organisation, well-being and all the other principles of power is so dependent on your individual personality, style and needs. There's definitely not one size fits all, and that's certainly not how I like to work with my clients and members. So just a reflection on the conversation yesterday and how a number of resources have now appeared in the membership site because I've created them and also how, as I said, I'm finding other stuff to refer to the member that relates to the stuff that she's working on at the moment because it's in my mind, because obviously we've had that conversation now. On another unrelated note, I've had an email this week from Blueberry, who are the people that I host the podcast with, and they are celebrating International Women's Day, which is apparently on the 8th of March, with an award for the favourite woman podcaster. I don't know if it's of people who host with them or just people who podcast generally, but I thought it might be fun to just mention that here in case you're enjoying the podcast enough to nominate me. It's something that I wouldn't normally do at all, but I just thought, well, these sorts of things don't happen unless you highlight them and flag them to people. So I thought, what the hell, I will. So they are asking for nominations by the 7th of March, and that's 2020 if you're listening to this really late. And if you're interested and you do enjoy the podcast and you'd like to nominate me as your favourite woman podcaster, then if you go to powertolivemore.com/nominate Jo, then you'll be able to do that there. So if you feel able to do that, I'd really appreciate it.
As I said, it's not the sort of thing I'd normally even think to participate in, ask people about or anything, but hey, I'm just putting it out there. So if you'd like to nominate me, then it's powertolivemore.com/nominate Joe. And again, the show notes for this week's show are at powertolivemore.com/147. And we look forward to speaking to you next week.
Use your power to live more.